we had in here at the Examiner Thomas Massey after Trump won, and he was talking about, oh, well, when the Tea Party happened, we thought it was like this free market libertarian revolution. And then Ted Cruz won, and we were like, okay, it's, conservatives, constitutionalists are winning. And then we realized they weren't voting for any of the ideas. Republican primary voters were voting for the craziest SOB in the room.
Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here with senior columnist Tim Carney. And Tim, obviously there's a lot of finger-pointing going on right now about who's to blame for the Republicans' underperforming expectations on Tuesday. One of the excuses that Republicans have pulled out is that they ran weak candidates in pretty competitive races. What do you think about that criticism?
Well, that's exactly right. What happened in a midterm of a Democrat's first presidential term, Republicans should pick up. And Pennsylvania is a Senate seat they've held for 12 years, and John Fetterman was an incredibly weak candidate. So that's a should have won race. Dr. Oz doesn't know anything about politics. There's arguments he wasn't really from Pennsylvania, and that really undermined him. So a better candidate in that race would have carried that. Same New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan should have been vulnerable, and she ended up running away with it. And then this is what some people say about Blake Masters in Arizona, caught in a really tight race, that should have been a pickup. So you have Republicans nominated candidates who didn't have political experience. They didn't have their own sort of political infrastructure, and in some of these cases, they were really off-putting to the voters, or were conspiracy theorists, and so they blew a great opportunity to easily pick up the Senate and the House.
Do you think Donald Trump is to blame for the fact that weak candidates emerged from primaries, or did the party not pay enough attention to those primaries?
It's a lot of those things. Yes, Donald Trump probably swung the Republican primary in Pennsylvania because that was so close in favor of Dr. Oz. But then you also have just the fact that he kind of set the tone. We had in here at the Examiner Thomas Massey after Trump won, and he was talking about, oh, well, when the Tea Party happened, we thought it was like this free market libertarian revolution. And then Ted Cruz won, and we were like, okay, it's, conservatives, constitutionalists are winning. And then we realized they weren't voting for any of the ideas. Republican primary voters were voting for the craziest SOB in the room. And that has really expanded, and that's part of what happened. In Maryland, there was a Republican governor for 8 years, and instead of nominating a more electable candidate, they went with somebody who was more buying into sort of conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. So an important thing, I don't think we're talking about people who are too far right. Herschel Walker is not like a right-winger.
Right.
It's that these people don't have political skills, they don't have political infrastructures, and they believe and say things that are out there, and that turns off voters.
A lot of the pre-election commentary was starting to downplay the importance of abortion as an election issue. There was a lot of talk about how Democrats might have miscalculated by pushing all their chips in on abortion. Do these results suggest that Democrats actually had it right in elevating that issue?
Abortion was a net benefit for Democrats. I don't think it was a big net benefit. If you look at where the generic ballot was just before Dobbs came out, sort of Republicans +4, and then you look at right now, as of now, the popular vote, sort of if you look at all the House races thrown together, is Republicans +6. So would that gain have been bigger down the stretch? Probably yes, but Republicans still sort of in the end performed better than where they were before Dobbs came out. So I do think it had a small net benefit. I think that a lot of Democrats actually backed away from abortion later on, which was a smart move because I think they could get a small gain from it. But if they ran on sort of all abortion all the time, that would have backfired. So a small net gain for them. It was not a tidal wave issue as they promised.
And finally, as of this taping right now, a number of states are still counting ballots. Some states still have thousands and thousands of ballots left to count. Nevada, Arizona, House races in California. I think a lot of the sort of debate about how these states should modernize their vote counting system was set to the side when Donald Trump was running his 2020 conspiracies, but do you think it is time to maybe have some of those conversations about why it takes so long?
Absolutely. And I was one of those people who 2 years ago, I said, hey, we need to talk about mail-in ballots. We need to talk about ballot harvesting, but let's not talk about it while Trump is trying to claim the election was stolen. So now that this election has happened, it's time. And the Washington Examiner's editorial on Thursday, 2 days after the election, said, hey, Florida can count the votes on election night. Every other state should do the same. For one thing, if you're going to do a mail-in ballot, you should have to request it, and you should have to send it in a couple days early so that it arrives by election day. This is totally doable, especially if you have same-day, if you have early voting and you have drop boxes and that sort of thing. States should all look at what Florida learned after the 2000 debacle and make it so that the votes are counted on election day.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Tim and the rest of the commentary team at washingtonexaminer.com.